Cool. Well, as I was saying before we started recording, great to see you again, Brian. Last time I saw you was at the great Religious Freedom and Business Foundation event you had in DC on employee resource groups, which was fantastic. So congrats again, and great to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for taking time to talk, Mark.
I was praying this would really work well. That's too easy. Jeez. Hey, can you just give a little bit of an introduction of who you are? That'd be fantastic.
Yeah, so again, Brian Grimm, I'm the president and founder of the Religious Freedom and Business Foundation, and we work to help businesses become religiously inclusive and also see how religious freedom, broadly defined, is good for economies and good for business, good for the bottom line, good for peace, things like that.
I'm with you, as you know, and so it's going to lead into a lot of what we're going to talk about. And you know, Simon Sinek made the why more famous than it was before, I guess. And I'd love for you to share your why, and even more inclusive in that, why you do what you do.
Yeah, well, the why is really important. So the why comes from two things. One, my own personal faith. So, you know, faith to me is something that's important. Having the freedom to choose faith. So, you know, many people, they're born into a faith, and they, you know, I think it's important that then people have the chance to choose it or make a different choice. So for me, I was born into a Protestant household, and then I became a Methodist, then I became a Baptist, and then since 1994, I've been Catholic. And so I haven't gone all the way and become, you know, Wiccan or something like that. But you know, that ability to choose is important because in order for us to be our full selves, we have to, you know, have things that are authentic in our lives. And so, you know, for me, I've found the most authentic expression of myself through my Catholic faith. And not, yeah, of course, not everybody, you know, I'm all for people finding what's their right place to be. And so I could talk a lot about that, but I think that relates to the other side, the business side. The why is, and I'll just give an example of two countries I worked in. One, and they're both on the same piece of sand, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, you know, both Muslim majority countries, conservative. The one country, Saudi Arabia, my faith was completely illegal. No chance to practice. If I had said even Merry Christmas, I was teaching there to my students, I would have been fired and penalized 2 months salary, and had to pay my family with 4 kids and my wife our own way home. So it was, you know, in that environment, I was counting the hours till my contract was up. In the United Arab Emirates, you know, more or less the same cultural, you know, religious background. There, my faith was completely free and legal and encouraged. King Zayed, or Sheikh Zayed at the time, gave our congregation land to have a church. And so there I was motivated to work. So that, you know, that why I think that freedom's important for us personally, but it has an impact on how we approach our work. And, you know, I just shared sort of from my own my own micro experience, but it's the experience of many other people as well. And so that's why I work on what I do, because I think it's really important.
Yeah, it is really important. It's the whole core, and it's great how you've engaged in that, in the sense of giving people, not telling people what to do, giving them the opportunity to be who they want to be. And I think that's important, because then a lot of times people say they're inclusive except for these guys. Yeah. And it just, you know, doesn't seem to work. That's not really inclusive. And you did bring up business, and it's really what we're talking about here, in sense of recognizing leaders who care. And it's in a way taken, and you know this as well anyway, decades to almost get to the point where you can align your corporate brand, which is your personal brand to some degree. It could be a family office brand, whatever, with social impact. Decades that they realize it's vital for, number one, attracting really good people to come there,
Yeah.
and retaining them, and then it's really good for business. So you partially answered the question already, but a little bit more. You know, what differentiates you? And it's a pushy question a little bit, but what differentiates you as one of the leaders who care? But from your perspective, from partnering with corporate leaders, including globally.
I didn't catch the question in that. What's the?
Well, what differentiates you as one of the leaders who care,
Oh,
but in particular, partnering with corporate leaders, for, like you said, in different countries even?
yeah. So, I mean, sort of the differentiator in what I do from other people who engage sort of on the religious freedom side is that most people who work on religious freedom are looking for the abuses and calling them out and trying to sort of change the world for the better by, trying to get rid of the bad. My approach is really different in that I'm looking at what it is that people are doing that's having a positive impact, and then trying to do the best I can to shine a light on that. So the conference that we had in Washington in February was really honoring Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 100 companies that have been active in the space of making their workplace religiously inclusive. Every 2 years with the UN Global Compact for SDG 16 peace, we give awards to business leaders who are advancing interfaith understanding and peace. So those are just two examples of sort of what differentiates the approach that I take. It's looking for best practices, examples of that, and then trying to help people coalesce around those things that they're doing good, and get more cooperation between companies and groups in society.
Who would have thought that it's a good idea for people to actually think about what are the good ways to go rather than concentrating on only the bad things?
Well, that's what businesses do all the time in marketing. They're putting out what the good story is about whatever their product or service, and one of the things that really captured my attention on this was an ad that aired in the UK before Christmas a few years ago, 3 years ago, I think. And it was the first time they had ever had an ad where they had a real priest and a real imam in the ad. And they had these two old guys, meeting for tea, the priest and the imam, and they're talking and obviously having a good time. You can't hear what they're saying, but they both get up and I have a hard time getting up. And then they each, have they leave each other, and they each have this bright idea. They pull out their phones, and then they're going, and then here they each bought something on Amazon and it's delivered to each of their doors, and they open it up and they're each so excited that they got this gift. And then you see the imam going into the mosque and the priest going into the church, and they pull these knee pads up that they had given each other because their knees were all creaky and old. They had to do a lot of kneeling. And, for me, I've showed that video to a lot of audiences, and, people were in tears watching that. They just find it so heartwarming to see that happen. So, I think that that's a positive message. And so, I guess I've learned from business. Part of what I've done is, see what they do good and be inspired by that.
Well, it's interesting. I compare a lot of things to sports, and the best thing I always found when as a player and then coaching was the best return of loyalty and performance from a player was when he made a mistake. The coach said, "Hey, you made a mistake. We'll fix this now. Get out there and let's make it happen." And it's
Yeah,
the same thing for a boss and an employee. In fact, you lose the whole return on investment by firing them then, because
yeah,
what they may have learned is now gone. So, and not to mention they feel good. Like, wow, I got somebody on my side, right?
Yeah, yeah. I think that's one thing. For another differentiator is for businesses when they realize that, I'm there to try to both encourage the good that they're doing and give them more ideas of, things they could do, and engage in that. That they sort of adopt me as one of their team members, and so that for me that's very meaningful. The big thing that I've seen, and it's obvious to anybody that works in business, but for those that don't, that it's not their first thought. When you think of business, you think of, Apple. Okay, I just showed an iPhone or an iPad, and then, but there's lots of people in that company, and so when I think of business, the first thing I think of are the people that are there. So American Airlines, who was one of our partners in the conference,
Right.
I've gotten to know so many of them, and I don't think of American Airlines now first as an airplane. I think of it as all these people that are involved in making that business work.
Well, that's why we do call it leaders who care and not corporations who care. And people say, oh, want to go work for that corporation. I get the comment, but
Yeah.
it is, you're right. It is always about people. And, my grandparents always used to say, and I'm sure your grandparents and a lot of other grandparents always used to say, as long as we have our health, that's the most important thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And they really meant it, because the immigrants, hardworking, the whole bit, that was the first priority. So when you consider all the incredibly fast change that's happened in the last 50, 40, 30, 10 years, technology and
Mm.
whatnot, COVID-19 here, dramatically impacting us in so many ways. There's almost been, not to sound religious, an awakening to some degree, maybe because we have time, to what's important. And I'd love to get your views, and it's so great you brought in the people aspect, because this is what it's all about. I'd like to get your views on what you see the infamous future of work, the future of business, including the part about inclusion, because there's going to be employees at the office. There'll be a lot more, even though it was starting already, but there'll be a lot more remote now too.
Yeah.
So what are your views of what the future looks like?
Well, I think that the one thing that's for sure is that people have discovered they can get a lot more, they can get a lot done, just like we're doing right now. We can do things remotely. So that is going to change things. It can change things for religion, can change things for business, it can change things for family. So many people have done so many creative things. I have friends on Facebook and other social media. They're sharing all kinds of things their family's doing during shutdown, and so I think that it's made new kinds of relationships. And I think one of the things that's coming out of this are people that have a safe, secure home that they can go to. The experience during this time is so different than people that don't. Homeless people, people with families that are fractured in some way, don't really have a place that's safe for them, and there's so much of that. So I think that's going to be something that is more, people are going to pay attention to a bit more, because they've seen that. And I think that we're also going to see some changes in industry. So the biggest business in America has been eating in restaurants. That's the biggest business, and now they've all been shut down, and people have learned to cook again, or if they didn't know. And so I think that people will be slower to go back, and so we may see some social changes where people are more, going out less for at least a time. And so we'll see some changes in that biggest employer in America, your neighborhood restaurant.
Yeah, we did a thing with Pepsi recently. You may have seen it on Some Good News, and they donated $3 million to the Restaurant Employee Relief Fund, and had it connected to John Krasinski and Some Good News. And but talking to restaurant people in general, just at a quick point, the industry looks like it's going to have to change tremendously with respect to, first of all, the value it provides to community, which I'll get to, which is the number one thing, and also having people get partake in and not struggle to be a restaurant employee,
Yeah.
from chef to the waiter to whatnot, because it is a vital part of our community. In the same way, like you're saying, cooking is a vital part of community,
Yeah.
and growing is a vital part of community.
Yeah.
And it's this is basic stuff. I mean, not to get biblical, just as a cute thing there, but it really is the basic stuff. And in that sense, what do you see current and certainly up and coming business leaders who care? What part do you see them playing to ensure that all the financial, the physical, and the mental well-being of their
Yeah.
talent, and can you talk about your opinion on how that is so important also to the business, but again to their community, not only local community but even global community?
Well, there at our conference, the dean of the Bush School of Business at Catholic University gave a great talk on virtues, and
Yeah.
the sort of four traditional virtues, and one of them was prudence. And to be prudent is to be careful, to think things through, to not make a rash decision, and another was temperance. To not do things in excess. So some of these virtues are actually really good for business. So we were on such a fast growing economy that just seemed like the only way it could go is up. It just seemed like that we were on this run, and in order for business to grow again, there's a lot of industries are taking a hit. And I think rebuilding that growth, it will be really good for leaders. And I think the best leaders are going to be thinking, how could I do this in a wise way, a prudent way, in a way that builds trust in our brand. So just even thinking of the airline industries, people are afraid to get that close to people. So things are going to have to change, and people are only going to fly again if they feel trust. And to feel trust, it's not just, you can't just put an ad up and make people trust. You have to, in a virtuous way, do things that are right for people. Maybe it's not the quickest thing to make profit again, but it would be the thing that would earn people's trust in the long term. And that's, I think, how good solid business will return.
Yeah, I agree. After 9/11, it was similar for a different reason, about getting on
Yeah.
a plane or a cruise ship or whatever. So you're right on there. What would you give as there's a lot of graduating students happening right now that aren't getting their graduation, and what piece of advice then, and maybe you've given it already, but a little focus, what piece of advice then would you give the next generation of leaders who care to, for what now? What next?
Well, I think one thing is that people are graduating there to consider maybe starting a business. Think of something different than you may have thought before, because there will certainly be new opportunities that are coming out once the economy opens up. And in fact, even right now, there's lots of new economies. People are making a lot of money by sewing face masks.
Right.
And, but there's so many other things. Just think of the digital way that we're connecting. There'll be a lot more opportunity, because right now, you've got a few choices of brands of connecting, but maybe there's more ways and new ways to do that. So whether it's sewing face mask, or I'll just throw out one that, from my travels through the years, when my wife and I were in Thailand, one of the things that they do in Thailand is have Thai cooking classes. And, you pay money for that.
Yeah.
And they have a constant stream of people, coming in for that. So, thinking of the restaurant business having gone, it's going to take a hit. But people cooking at home, why not open up some, kitchens around town that people come in and, for $20 a session, you you learn how to cook a meal, and you bring the ingredients and you take it home, at night. So that's, that's not a widespread industry, and I get 10% of anybody that takes that idea and
Well, I can.
runs with
It's
it.
interesting you say that because I did do that a few years back.
Did
Here at
you?
the hotels, they've got a longevity center, and part of that is about cooking, and
Yeah.
it's a blast. And I'm a terrible cook, but my sons are awesome cooks, and I just love hanging around with them telling me what to do in the kitchen, listening to music, and
Yeah.
being together. So, but for future technology, I'm looking forward to your holograph appearing in my house, and we're talking and hanging out. There's no hugging because you're not really there. So
That's right.
and you do that. And from what I understand, I heard Fauci say that we might have to eliminate handshakes forever because it's the number one way that we get sick. So that's a tradition. There's a lot of good thinking going on, which you don't want bad things to happen, but there's a,
Yeah.
a book I've read again recently called Man's Search for Meaning. And there's meaning in everything. And it's a matter of what do you do with it? How do you think about it? And like you said before, the prudence and everything that you've got gives you an opportunity to think right now. So hey, always great to talk to you. I know we could go on for a long time, and I certainly look forward to continuing to support what you're doing, and working together for religious freedom, for business to leaders to create peace out there, and have a better world, man.
Yeah. Amen.
Amen. We can sing. I sang that at a restaurant not too long ago. We were at one table and we all started going, "Hey, amen," and then the other table started. It was like fantastic. So, hey, all the best. Stay safe, and I'm sure we'll speak soon.
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks, Mark.